Diane Sands describes herself as the Sporty Goddess. She is an athlete extraordinaire who lives on the beautiful island of Kauai, where she's lived for 19 years. She is a long-distance ocean swimmer, and she and her companions battle the rough Pacific Ocean waters and open swim for up to 3 miles, where they enjoy the company of turtles, fish, monk seals, and sometimes even hear whales. Her other sports activities include outrigger canoe paddle, stand-up paddle, golfing, hiking, and cycling. Diane is also living with chronic pain after years of pushing her body to its limits. She shares that it was after many repetitive stress injuries, concussions, falls, and a few near-fatal accidents that forced her to redefine the terms athlete, warrior, and competitive. She is a natural health specialist who provides performance coaching for injured athletes and performance legends, and she's also a body worker who created and trademarked her technique, the Kalape method. Listen to this episode of the Age Has No Limit podcast to learn about this amazing athlete and warrior. Her story and what she's been able to accomplish through sheer will and perseverance are amazing. It's the Age Has No Limit podcast. We're here to show and prove that your age shouldn't prevent you from designing and living the life you want. I'm your host, Patrice Davis. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Age Has No Limit podcast. I am here with Diane Sands, athlete extraordinaire, and we're going to learn a little bit more about just her life as a lifelong athlete and learn a little bit about where she is now and how that relates to her passion to help, those who have been athletes all their lives and, just provide a little bit more information about how she helps them. So Diane, as I was preparing for this episode, your entire bio was very moving, but I have to say that the first sentence really resonated with me. And that's when you wrote, "I find my joy and solace in nature and playful adventures." So please share with me and the audience how nature and playful adventures bring you joy and solace.
That's a great question. And I like to tell people that I'm first an athlete. Like my soul just resonates with being an athlete and being outdoors. So I grew up in Southern California in a beach town. I'm a beach girl, known as a tomboy. And movement is the number one thing for me. So what nature does for me is it brings me the awe and, the awesome. And when I think about being outdoors, being in nature, it's about exploring, it's about adventure. I've never been a gym rat because it's in a box, right? Mm-hmm. So anything where I can see the horizon, where I can see the future, I guess, I'm going to go explore. I'm going to go adventure for that. The beach has always been my solace when I've had troubles in life, like deaths in the families or whatever. I would just get on my bike and ride to the beach and just sit there and listen to the waves. When I haven't been near the beach, then it's about water, finding a river, a lake, or going for a hike, and listening to just the quiet and the quiet within yourself that you can find alone in nature. So yeah, that's basically it. And all of that makes so much sense because, being out in nature, there is something unexplainable. And I'm sure there are books and research out there about what it actually does to the body and why it's so calming. And even things like putting your barefoot on the ground or barefoot on the sand, I guess in your case, there's, I'm sure there's research out there about it, but I know from my own experience that yes, being out in nature is extremely calming. And one of the places that you are, actually the place where you are right now is one of the most beautiful places to be out in nature and enjoying the beach and enjoying the outdoors. And you live on the beautiful island of Kauai. Tell me how long you've lived there and what would you say you love the most about living there? So I've lived on Kauai about 19 years. I had a few years where I lived on both the Big Island and here doing some work back and forth. And I would say, the Kauai has some of the most beautiful beaches in the world, and it is a wild island. And we have a saying here that the island will either accept you or spit you out, because not everyone can handle the the intense switches and changes of the weather, of the elements in the environment isn't for everyone. So for me, I landed here about 2005, and it's a very small place, and it's a place of community. So I can be walking down the street and people are like, "Hey, Diane," and I love that. I'm not a city person. And being a beach girl, this, like, I can jump in the ocean pretty much whenever I want. And it also has gorgeous hiking trails. But I would say for me, it was really having the community and having that connection with others who enjoy the outdoors. Most everyone here that I know or who I've met, they also find their happiness in nature, whether it's gardening or walking their dogs, because we can. And I empathize with, or I shouldn't say empathize, because some people love living in cities. It's never worked for me. But I grew up in Southern California. It was like the concrete jungle, and all I wanted to do is get away from that. So that is, in a nutshell, what Kauai brings to me. And I am, like I said, I'm an ocean girl. I am swim often. I compete in sports that are about the ocean, and the ocean on Kauai is very extreme. So it does give me that thrill and that adrenaline that I haven't found anywhere else in the world. And I 100% respect the ocean. And I'm one of those people that's like, nope, I'm not going out today. And then other times it's calm and it's inviting. And it's a place that it took me a while for me to get calm with the island because of the elements. Like the wind can just blow the doors slam shut, and it's like, oh my gosh. So it definitely is an island or it's a place, I should say. It's also the most isolated place in the world. So like, we're 5,000 miles pretty much from any landmass, aside from the other islands. So it's a place where a lot of people, especially the people who come here, they go through a lot. Like it takes 6 hours to get on a plane to see any family or to get to, the continent, then you really have to
settle.
Be true with, you have to be settled. You have to be true with yourself. And some people come here and, it's really rough, and they end up going back to the mainland, or the continent, or wherever they're from. So I've been through a lot of changes in my life. It's a place where you can slow down. It's also a place where, like, lights out at 9 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
There's not a lot of the social activities are different. We go to people's houses, we have potluck, we play cards or whatever, but most people are out and about early in the morning, and they're like, for me, I'm go until 8 o'clock, and then I've passed out, which is very different than living in a city or in even a busy place, and you got concerts to go to. It just gets so fast paced that it's really easy to avoid and ignore the things you got to work on in your life to evolve.
So it's interesting because before we started recording, Diane, was sharing a little bit about and I've actually learned a little bit more about some of the things that she just described, and the fact that she kind of glossed over it. I participate in, sports that involve the ocean. Diane, I'm really, really, right after this question, I really want your, to provide some insight into just how much you're actually swimming and enjoying the outdoors as a part of, yes, being an athlete, but it sounds like it's also simply a lifestyle as well. But before we go there, I'd love to find out, you said you were from Southern California. Tell us a little bit about your family. Do you have any siblings?
So take a seat and prepare for this story. I'm the last of 10 children, and I also have a twin. So being the baby, and that was all acquired within 12 years.
Yeah.
So my mom popped him out within 12 years. I had two sets of twins, and I'm the baby twin.
Wow.
And so and my twin and I are very different. We have very different personalities. And I guess I was more, I used to be very shy. I was more of the voyeur who just kind of sat back and watched everything unfold. And I like to make people laugh, and I'm the clown. So, I had older brothers and sisters, and as a young child, I could see how their life was unfolding, and I would say like, oh, I don't want that, I want this. And then I'm 50, I'm going to be 54. So, I was born in 1970. And I also saw how different my persona and my attitude towards being a woman and towards being a strong feminine woman was different than my older sisters, who maybe felt that, but society wasn't ready for it. So I feel very lucky to have been born in as a Gen Z and grown up in that environment. And I have a older brother who's 3 years older, and he was very competitive in sports, and I almost got a baseball scholar, or almost got who's trying to get into the professional baseball. And I was his, I don't want to say, I was going to say something not good, but I was his person that I had to play everything with him. So I, being a tomboy, and I was just like, I'm going to beat every boy there is. Like, you give me a challenge, I'm going to do it.
I'm going to try it.
So, yeah. So go ahead.
No. I think because that's one of the things that I think you were sharing earlier, that you were always this active as a child. I think you said you played basketball, you played a few other sports. Let's talk a little bit about what you currently do. Now, you swim in the ocean. I'm assuming this is free swimming in the ocean. I don't even know if there's any other way to do, but this free, you swim in the ocean, you hike, you cycle, you outrigger canoe paddle, which I'd love for you to please explain to the audience what that is. And of course, you stand up paddle. I think a lot of people are already familiar with that. And now you are golfing. So let's talk about your swimming in the ocean. How often do you do it? Typically, how far are you swimming for, or how long are you swimming? And definitely, please tell us about the outrigger canoe paddle. That one's new to me.
Sure. So the ocean swimming, I do long distance ocean, so open water ocean swimming. And I've been very fortunate to have a squad or a tribe, whatever you want to call it, of ocean swimmers also. And we typically go out, like Sunday's our day, I call it my church, where we go anywhere between 1 mile to 3 miles, just depending on the currents, depending on the weather. And we're not going out to have a destination or to have a fast pace. We go out to see the turtles and to see the fish. Sometimes we see some monk seals. Sometimes we might hear the whales. It's just magical. But we are about 500 yards out, and we are swimming in a fast pace. But we're swimming in a area that most people should not swim. If you're not an accomplished swimmer, you should not be doing that. And all of us, it's just a joy, I would say. It's we're all very safe together. We wait for each other. And we all we actually are, a lot of us are going to go on a swim vacation together. So it's become a group of people who really just love the ocean. And thankfully we do, because we live on an island.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
And the ocean here it's I would say it's some of the roughest waters in the world. I haven't been all over the world, but I would say it is. So so we know the currents, we know all the tides and all that stuff when we go out. So when I can't go out in the deeper ocean, as we like to call it, then I just swim in the bay. Swimming for me is something that, I'm an Aquarius, so I'm a water girl. But it's something that just soothes my body. Like whenever I have chronic pain, or which I do have chronic pain, but whenever I just, my body needs to just recover, like floating in the ocean or just stretching out. It's my way of stretching. I like to say I do yoga in the ocean. So that is, so that's the swimming part.
Yeah. Tell me about the outrigger canoe, paddling, right? And then I really want to, because, you know, I really want us to definitely talk about, you know, just some of the ways that you used to compete, you know, your competitive, let's say the competitive sports that you participated in. You can tell I'm not an athlete. And
You said you're a
how,
runner.
yeah, I used to be a runner. And then, you know, just some of the pain and I really definitely want to touch on how your experience has as an athlete and one who is, you know, coping with chronic pain, and how, of course, you are helping others with similar situations. But let's definitely start with what an outrigger canoe paddler is, or what it does. I just want to make sure I learn more about that.
So outrigger canoe is it's the state sport of Hawaii, and it's culturally how the Polynesians got to Hawaii and went all over the world. And I do what's called 6-man. So there's 6 people in the canoe, and it's different than canoeing in that there's a pontoon on the side. So there is like the canoe, and then there's the pontoon. It's called the ama in Hawaiian. But that gives the balance. So the way that it works is every seat has a job. So seat 1 sets the pace, seat 2 does something, seat 3 does something, seat 4 does something, seat 5, and there's the steers person. So it's very much a team sport. You're not going to go very far, or you're not going to be able to have the speed that you can, or the connection, if every person isn't connected. So it's a really beautiful sport. It's one that I started doing when I was about 24. And my coach at the time said, there's 2 types of paddler, or 3 types of paddlers. There's the ones who try it for a little bit and then they really never do it again. There's the ones who do it and they enjoy it. And then there's the ones who do it for the first time and it gets seeped into their soul and they dream about it. So I'm a little bit between the 2 and the 3. I have lived in places without the ocean for my work or whatever, and I think about outrigger canoe paddling. So it's for me, I'm a team sport person, so it's one of the most beautiful ways to demonstrate connection with others, because and with the ocean, but particularly because there is the ama, or the balance. If there is any, if everyone's not in sync, the canoe can flip over. So there is a complete syncness there's a complete syncness of you got to stay in balance with each other. You got to stay in tune with each other. And when you do it long enough, you can read the person in front of you and you can anticipate. And so to me, it's a beautiful, I guess, metaphor for just how we should be as humans. I guess that's my philosophy of life.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's a beautiful metaphor of how we should be as humans in community, working in sync. If something goes off kilter, of course it can, cause problems for the entire crew, right? So that's I did not know that. Number one, didn't know it was Hawaii's state sport. Number two, didn't know that was how the Polynesians arrived to the island. And for those of you, I'm really excited about this. I'm a trivia nerd. And even understanding how the team worked together. So that's really, really so interesting. So really thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Now, so what did you mentioned earlier that you've lived in other places for your work. What did you do early in the early stages of your career?
So my dream job was just anything that had to do with sports. I've always just wanted to get paid to be an athlete. And I did kind of the typical thing of like working through high school in an office and being 6 feet tall. I was like, this is painful. Like sitting behind a desk is not fun when you're tall. And then like carry that on to corporate. I was paid my way through college by working through in a corporate in human resources, and I just was pretty much depressed all the time, and really was envious of my friend who was a lifeguard and taught swim lessons, and but it was like, oh, corporate's going to get you money. And then I was very fortunate. I have a friend who said, you should go apply for this company that does active travel vacations. So I like to say I was a semi-professional athlete because I did get paid to be an athlete. So we took people on week-long and 2-week-long active travel trips. So cycling, some hiking, some river rafting. My specialty was the high mileage trips where we went from anywhere from 80 miles in a day to 120. And then when we had an off day, we were hiking 12 miles in a beautiful location. I also specialized in what we call the canyons or the Southwest, which was Bryce Canyon, Grand Canyon, Zion, Napa Valley. Worked over in France, worked in Costa Rica and Holland. So it was every time I was going to work, I was outdoors, and I was also motivating people. Like some people hadn't really been on a bike since they were teenagers, but they just wanted an active vacation, and they would sign up for these 80-mile trips. I'm like, what are you doing here? So their goal was to do a 100-mile bike ride, and sometimes they trained for it, sometimes they did it, and I would be behind them, motivating them, making sure they had their nutrition and getting them to that goal. And that was just a beautiful time in my life. And it was also, reflecting back, it was probably not only the most fun I ever had, but the most impactful, because I found my people. All of my coworkers were very similar. When I grew up, it was like I was being told I was too independent. I needed to settle down. I needed to commit, like all these things. And then I found my people who were like, we only have one life. You got to go for it. And we were all very joyous, and we were also, in a sense, serving people who wanted to experience our joy as well. I remember I said to one of my clients, I think she was a lawyer or something, and I said, like, you're doing so much in this world, and I felt like I was just having fun. And she said to me, you have one of the most important jobs in the world, because you're giving people joy when they really need it. You're giving people relaxation, joy, and happiness. And I was like, okay, I'll take that.
I mean, I'm thinking about it. That sounds like one of the, every now and then you see in the news, like, apply for the perfect position. You can be the person that, helps protect the reef off the coast of Australia. You just have to swim it. It's just all of these really cool types of jobs. And what you just described, that you get to travel around the world, different parts of the world. You get to be active. You get to encourage people, basically be their cheerleader. You're in beautiful environments. It sounds almost like a perfect fit for you. So, I'm sure you were very thankful to your friend who recommended that you apply for that position. But yeah, that does sound like a lot of fun. I didn't even know that positions like that existed. And so,
and I will say, sorry to interrupt. I will say, when I started, there was no social media, and then when social media came around, we were like, no, you don't need to take pictures like that. It was almost like, don't give away our special spots, because when we weren't working, we would have the crew would go off and explore. Like we were going into slot canyons and going into places that very few people went into. And now, social media kind of ruined it all, because everyone knows where these places are. So it was, I like to get in trouble a lot. Like other people would be like, oh, I'm so afraid of that. And I didn't have to tell anyone what I was doing, because no one was, I had my friends who were with me, but it wasn't plastering it on social media. So it was this, like I said, it was a very joyous and beautiful time, because it was just mine and the people that I experienced it with.
Yeah. So now let's talk about, sports you played as a child, but what, the fact that you have, because of, all the things that you did, in terms of all the sports you played, and maybe some of the activities that you did as an adult, you are currently experiencing chronic pain. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your life as an athlete and, the way things are now, with the chronic pain that you're experiencing? And if you can also explain how you're helping people that are 40 and over cope with the pain, cope with the transition from being a more active adult to now having to, maybe, temper some of their athleticism, and maybe that you're not. I would love to learn a bit more about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, like I said, being an athlete is connected to my soul. So and really it's about play.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I feel like my purpose in life is to play and have fun and to help others have that joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that with sports. So growing up, it was varsity, like as a freshman, in basketball, softball, volleyball. I also played beach volleyball in tournaments up and down Southern California coast. And then after college, played intramurals and just continued to do all that. And then got into the job that I was talking about, the career. I call it, it was a career. I did it for 10 years. And it was, a lot of my sports were jumping. I think I mentioned I'm 6 feet tall. So there was a lot of impact. And then when you're cycling 120 miles a day or hiking a lot, and that particular career was very physical. And it's not like we would be able to, ride 120 miles and then get a massage and then stretch or whatever. So when I was about 36, my body just broke. I will never forget, I was living on the Big Island of Hawaii and working over there. And I went on a 40-mile bike ride. So it was like 20 miles one way, 20 miles the other. And I was just crying. And I tell people this and they're like, that's a long way. And I'm like, well, when you are used to 100 miles, like 40 miles is just like kind of an easy thing, right? So, and I was just crying. I really couldn't move. It was really, really slow. And then I went to get a massage the next day and paid for an hour. And I woke up 3 hours later and she's like, your body is a mess. And I would get massages often. And I'm also trained as a massage therapist. So I just started a process where I was going and finding holistic healers, going to physical therapists, and everyone was telling me, like, your body just needs to rest. You have like brought it kind of to the breaking point. And I just thought that's what happens to everyone when they get a certain age. To me, 40 was like the peak, and then it's all downhill because I didn't have role models in my life of being an active person over 50 or being even healthy. I didn't really have even role models of someone being healthy over 50. So I'll never forget telling my chiropractic doctor, holistic doctor, like, well, this is just what happens. And she was the same age. She's like, I'm not in chronic pain, Diane. I don't wake up in pain. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm different. And I'd mentioned I'm a twin sister. She doesn't have chronic pain. So it really gave me this appreciation for, one, understanding my body and how my approach to being an athlete would need to be different than people who aren't in chronic pain or people who don't have the similar pains that I do. And also, in a way, accepting that it's okay to just ride 40 miles.
Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay to like just hike 10 miles or 3 and just, I always enjoyed it, but I didn't need to push myself to that extreme. And I guess I'd never thought of myself as pushing it. It's more like I said, like, I just see the adventure. I don't see the goal in mind of like, oh, I got to do 12-mile hike. I see, oh, there's got to be something more beautiful around the bend. So, like, I just got to see one more thing that's going to do it. So when I went through all that, it's been, I mean, it's probably been like a 10-year journey at least of accepting it, not accepting it, going through a lot of phases of grief. Also realizing that because other people aren't in pain and I'm competing or training with these people, I might not be as fast as them. And that changed my social group a little bit because there was like the fast group and then there was me. But I needed to find people who were a little bit in between. And I also realized that I didn't want to go Western medicine route. I've never had a surgery and I didn't want to go that. And I needed to find my own way of wellness. Like went through phases where I did yoga, tried meditation. Like I read all the research, like try meditation and that will help, but do yoga and these things all help. But then the next day I still woke up in chronic pain. Yeah. So then it became a personal mission to, I mean, in some ways, I don't want to use the word ignore, but in some ways, understand it, see it, acknowledge it, and say, you're not going to control me, chronic pain. And I'm going to move throughout this world as if I don't have it. So most people, when they see me, they would never guess how much pain I'm in. Every once in a while, I'll have people say like, "Why are you limping?" You know, yeah. I have a hard time moving my left leg. So, and it's also given me a lot of compassion that I didn't have when I was younger, for others and also for myself. But yeah, I would say I didn't have a lot of compassion when I was in my 20s, and now I'm like, okay. And I connect more with people who need my help, who need not only my experience, but my healing abilities as a body worker and as someone who's gone through a lot.
So how would you say you help them? What are the ways that you actually help your clients, the people that you work with?
So number one, I developed a method called the Kilape method that is my style of doing body work, but it also is a method that a person can use at home, using their own hands to structurally realign their body whenever there are points of pain. And it's something that you can do at the grocery store, you can do when you're sitting in your car. For me, it's some of my pain is has to do with posture. Sometimes it's a matter of now I'm doing a little bit more strength training. So the way I help people is in many ways I motivate them, and in many ways I'm giving them hope. Just like my doctor had given me hope of like, you will get better one day, or you will get to a point where you will like be able to do the things that you used to do. Sometimes it's just time. So I guide and coach them through that process. There is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote a great book a long time ago called The 5 Stages of Grief. And it's more of it's a death. Sorry, I think don't correct me on this one. I think the book is of death and dying, but it's about the 5 stages of grief. And we can apply that also to this grief that we feel when we can't do something anymore. And whether you're an athlete or you're just active, and you like to go for a walk with your dog, and there's something that we just can't do anymore, and we go through this mental, like a lot of mental hoops and jumps. And so I help them with the mental mindset to understand their body, understand what's happening, understand how to approach this next phase in their life. And it could be anyone, there's 20-year-olds who are going through this. They had some kind of traumatic injury. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of trauma that can be stored in the body. So helping them with that. And then also in many ways, because I really tried almost everything, when you're in chronic pain, that's like, you just don't want to be in pain anymore. So you'll try almost everything. Yeah. And it can be from like buying a $1,500 biomat or going to see a somatic healer. And like a lot of healers have the like, I'm gonna fix you idea. And so I've tried that. I've tried most of them, and that's why I developed my technique. It's not I'm not saying I'm going to take your chronic pain away, but I'm going to help you move. You're going to help yourself move a little better every single day. And then along the way, I have really changed my nutrition, and that there was a lot of grief in that. I years and years. I never was a big drinker, but socially, I like to have some cocktails or meet friends for happy hour or whatever. And pretty much gave up all that 5 years ago. Now I say I'll have a little bit of alcohol for celebrations. But that was a big shift too. And that's, I think nutrition is, our way of life is also something that we have to shift and change as we move through our body and our body's changes. And then in November, I gave up chocolate. So that's been the hardest one.
Yeah. Wow.
And that was, I was purely addicted to chocolate. So I gave that up, and that's been hard. There's no like social connection with chocolate like there is with alcohol, but so I go through these little like trials, like, let me see if this works. And like, even when I went through giving up alcohol or trying to reduce sugar, like 4 or 5 months later, the mental game is, well, I did that and it's not helping. So I'm just going to go back to it because I want to enjoy life. And if I'm going to be in pain for the rest of my life, I might as well enjoy it. And I'm going to eat that bread with gluten. I'm going to eat that. So, and then sleep is a big factor. So like 8-10 years ago, I started doing time restricted feeding, which is different than other types of nutrition. And then I also wanted to develop, and I want to help. What I like to say is, I guess the normal person, the average person, the person who doesn't have accessibility to a cold bath or an infrared sauna. And, they're busy, they're going about their day. Like they wake up, I don't have children. So that's another reason why I can do a lot of things that I do in terms of athletics, but they're not going to, some people can afford it, but who's really going to how many people really have a cold bath, a cold water plunge available to them? So there's a lot of research and evidence, and there's some trendy stuff going on. And it can be, when you're in chronic pain or you're injured, like I said, you're trying to get better, and you want to get to that body and spirit that you had. And so you go through all these games that your mind's going to play with it. So I help people navigate that. I help people find either a new passion or a new joy, or like in my case, find that it's okay to just do a little bit.
Well, so tell me, that's it's so interesting. I find it, I like how you kind of gloss over the fact that, we just, swim 1 to 3 miles out into the ocean. We'll, cycle for 120 miles per day. But now you're saying you're okay with only 40 miles. And basically accepting that what still might be a pretty large number for most people, that you've decided that, that's fine. You can be okay with 40 miles as opposed to 120 mile cycling, adventure, let's call it, a day, right? You said a day. That's pretty cool. So tell us about Sporty Goddess.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So the Sporty Goddess is my brand. I started about 5 years ago. I consider myself a goddess, and I consider all women goddesses, and men, if they want to be goddesses, they can be too. And really it's the idea that, that no matter where we are in the phase of our life, when we think about a goddess has ethereal power. A goddess has, they're not a god, they're not a queen. it's like the Wonder Woman of the world. Right?
Yeah.
The goddess is someone who approaches life with joy, approaches other people with open arms. And there are some goddesses that weren't quite, we're a little bit different. But the Sporty Goddess is someone who really never gives up that spirit and that feeling of being alive in this world and bringing joy and just an effervescent personality to everything they do. And because we are all Sporty Goddesses, I believe, I've had a number of people say, well, I'm not an athlete. I'm like, yes, you are. Like, I feel like everyone is an athlete. You just don't have to, you might be a dancer, you might, walk, you might enjoy gardening. Like, everyone has movement. So the Sporty Goddess is also about celebrating movement, celebrating the outdoors, celebrating this life, this vessel that of our body that can bring us just the life that we really want and that is always going to have passion with us.
So is the Sporty Goddess a service that you provide? Is it a product? Or is it maybe a method that you use maybe in different environments? So maybe the Sporty Goddess is a method that you have created and it can be applied maybe at a community center for what, one of the senior programs or one of the, even the, young adult programs. Give me a little bit more detail exactly what Sporty Goddess is so that people can reach out and find out how maybe you can help them out as well.
So the Sporty Goddess is a coaching program and a mindset program that I provide, and then also I have retreats or active travel in that sense that include wellness and include any type of activity that is like I'm having a retreat in Costa Rica, so I'm designing activities that go along with the connection. And then throughout the retreat, we would have wellness providers or discussions, and there might be some yoga, but really about finding that place as we enter into a different phase of our life, and we still want to continue to be called a Sporty Goddess. So it is a motivation and mentorship program and coaching program. And like, I love the idea of bringing it to youth sports and girls and women everywhere. Absolutely. So that is, it's something that's evolving at this particular moment. I do have, I use my method, the Kilape method, with the Sporty Goddess coaching to bring people an awareness to how to help their body. And then I have a course that that teaches people and helps guide people through the process of having their mindset, working through chronic pain, working on to continuing being the goddess and the athlete and the someone who approaches life and brings joy into everything they do.
Yeah. So, so that's interesting. I keep saying interesting. I always have to kind of pull back. Okay. There's intriguing. I'm going to have to keep a whole bunch of I words on my laptop here so I can remember, because I really do find a lot of things interesting. And I guess it's become a habit to just say, oh, that's interesting. So I'm glad you were able to provide some insight on exactly what Sporty Goddess is. Now, what I'd like for you to do is, tell me, is there maybe a client experience that you can recall that made you say, you know what, I'm definitely on the right path because I've seen this client go from here to here, and I know this is my calling, so to speak. Would love to learn if you have a client experience you can share.
That's a really great question, because I think I'm humble, so I think I forget that I am making a big impact on a lot of people. And as a motivator and cheerleader, it's really about that person. But the one that comes to mind is a client and friend who had a very traumatic car accident when she was about 24. Basically was dead, was brought back to life, had
Wow.
multiple surgeries to like from her face to her legs to her body, and survived, had to learn how to walk again, all of the things that happen when we have a traumatic car accident. And then she's went back to life, was working. She was always a swimmer. She has a hard time, she's in pain in terms of walking, so it was adjusting with that. She would say to me, well, I really want to get back into swimming, but I'm like, what's holding you back, right? So I helped her with her mindset of my body hurts, or I can't do this, to let's just try, like, let's get out there, let's swim. Like, we'll start with a little bit. And it was really amazing because within a couple weeks of working with me and being back into the sport that she loves and she grew up with, she reconnected with it, I would like to say, because she had forgotten how much she loved swimming and how much joy it brought her, because it was something that she did when she was in high school. And I think that's what happens a lot. People say like, well, I did this in high school. And then it's like, well, let's reconnect with that, because if you did it when you were younger, you probably really love it now. So she got back into it, and then I was working with her to help her structural alignment, help her understand her body. She wasn't dwelling in her pain all the time. And when we dwell in our pain, we also go back to that injury. We go back to that accident. So every time she thought about like, well, my leg hurts, it was like because of this. So I helped her, I helped her say, every single time you have to explain to someone, well, my ankle hurts because I almost died in a car accident. Then your body's like, blah, 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 blah. Like all the cells are going like, okay, let's remember that trauma. And like, you're always going to remember that trauma, but you don't have to always explain it. And I said, because when we look at you, we don't see someone who experienced that. And my philosophy is when you get to a certain point in your life, if you don't have injury and you don't have some kind of trauma, like, you've lived a very good life, because most people have something, an illness, trauma, whatever. So, her joy came back, and then she just went now all into swimming. Whenever she travels, she goes and finds a swim group to swim, like a pool swim group. And then just recently I said, okay, like she wants to start doing, some more swim competitions, ocean swim competitions. And I said, well, if you really want to get to this point and you're swimming, you need to do some cross training. Like let's get you some strength training. And I said, let's get you on a bicycle. And she was all very like, no, I don't use my feet. Like that hurts. I'm like, we're just going to start with a mile. And like, I go out cycling in the morning with sunrise, and it's just a really joyous thing. And we're doing this for joy. We're not doing this for competition. So she went out with me, and then at the end, she's like, yeah, I'm going to go get a bike. So, so seeing that transformation and seeing not only how I was able to help her reconnect with something that brought her joy, and then also give her the tools to, when she wakes up every day, to reset her mind, and to also have the tools to say, okay, if I have this pain here, maybe I need to do this with my body. And I can continue with movement in this sense. And what I noticed with her also was, it was not part of her narrative anymore.
Good.
So I noticed that when she talked about her body or whatever, she no longer explained that to people. And I told her, you don't have to explain anything. If you want to, that's good, but you don't really have to explain all this trauma that happened in your life. I'm sorry. So that was, I would say, one of the more impactful. And it's getting through the day sometimes that can be a struggle. So working with the mindset to build that muscle, to push through and to build that muscle and to build that joy. So,
well, so I'm thinking now about what you said, that every time she's explaining it, she's basically reliving it. And so what you're getting at and what I have been learning is the power of words, and how sometimes when you hold on to a memory and you won't let it go, you keep sending yourself back to that place. And it's absolutely right. You know, what you're doing is your body sort of responding to your thoughts. And, you know, so every time you go back, you know, as you said, you really are almost definitely not reliving it, but it's like there's a body memory, so to speak, that I'm learning about. And so I think that was a great example of that. And I'm so glad, and I'm sure she's very grateful for the work that you've been doing with her, because you know, having lived a near death, experienced a near death experience, I'm sure that was traumatic on a lot of levels. So absolutely, you know, the work that you're doing is really important. It also helps that you actually go out probably in the water with her. And you're not like instructing her, go in the water, and you're standing on land. You're probably out in the water with her. So I'm sure that also helps. So that's fantastic, a fantastic story. So I feel almost weird asking you this, because I remember you were explaining before we started recording the difference between what you're currently training, and if you can explain that for us. You're not quite a triathlon athlete, but you are currently training for what would be the Olympics of the sport that you're in. So if you can explain that for the audience.
Oh, okay. So I am training for an Olympic distance triathlon. So there's the Ironman distance, and then there's, I think, 70.2. I can't remember. There's like a half, and then there's Olympic distance, and then there's sprints. And when I was in high school and in my 20s, I did a few sprint triathlons. Wasn't I never got that like joy of running that people talk about, but I did it. And then so this is a triathlon that I've always wanted to do. It's on the Big Island. When I lived there, it's a really, really fun one. It's called the Lava Man Triathlon, and it's hitting its 25th anniversary. And then my friends who I swim with, and they all were talking about it, and I just got roped into it. And I said, like, I'm not a runner. I don't run. And then someone called me out and said, well, just do it. Like, they kind of used my own words on myself
Against you.
Like, yeah. And I looked at it like, okay, it's 10K. Like, in my mind, I can just walk it. I kind of feel like if unless you have a time frame, you can really do anything in a day. So and I have one of my friends who is in our swim group. He just turned 80, and and I said, like, my goal is to beat him, and all my friends are like, good luck, you're not gonna beat him.
I like that. I like
so
it.
I know I have the cycling is about 25 miles, and the swim is, it's something that I can easily do. And so it's really been a self. It's really been one of those things that I decided to do to challenge my mental self and my physical self. And I've done a 10K in the last like 5-6 years as a walk run. So I know I can do it. And it was something that I said, okay, I'm just going to commit to this, and I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to see how it happens. And because I'm doing it with my friends, it's something that's really joyful. We connect with each other. We talk about our training. I think that's one thing. A lot of athletes would just like to talk about training and our nutrition. And then as a side note, my outrigger canoe paddling coach asked me to train on the team that's going to try out for world championships for the trials. So that is connection with all my training together. It has been a challenge because the majority of my injuries have been to my feet and my legs. And so I have to go about it strategically. And that is also something that I help clients with when they are returning to a sport, or they're trying to recover from injury, is go about it strategically. I don't have to go run 10K right away. Like let's work ourselves up to it. And also being okay with walking, or being okay with altering the activity for your body. So that I think it's just more of a challenge for me.
Yeah. So, and I feel sometimes the stories that our guests share are just so fantastic that I almost feel like this question probably doesn't even need to be asked, but I'm going to ask the question anyway because I ask everyone, and it's a tradition on our show. So, what does an age has no limit life look like to you? I think you've all been living outside of limits for a long time. The work that you do is certainly, limitless, and because you're helping people understand that they don't need to operate within the limits of their pain or the limits of whatever mindset challenge they happen to be stuck in, and that's preventing them from being as active as they used to be. But I would love for you to explain to me what an age has no limit life looks like to you.
That's a great question. I think for me, one of the reasons I was attracted to your podcast is just that title, Age Has No Limit. And, there's this saying like, oh, age is just a number. And I'm like, well, when you're in chronic pain, it's more than a number, right?
Yeah.
Or there's the saying of like 50 is the new 30. I'm like, it's not. Like, I will happily return to how I was in my 30s. Like 50 is very, very different. So,
yeah.
Or, I'm like I said, I swim with an 80-year-old, and I do sports with 72-year-olds. And, majority of like some of the most competitive age groups when you're doing competitions, whether it's a marathon or anything, is the 50 age group, because their kids have grown, some of them are starting retirement, they have more time, they because their kids are grown and they want a connection, they want that. So when I think about Age Has No Limit, we're living longer, we're being allowed to live longer, and our bodies need to start adapting to it. And we can't really dictate when the end is going to happen. So each age, no matter where you're at, where it's your 20s or your 30s or 40s, 50s, or whatever, in my life, how I've led it is I have no limits there, because everyone society can define what you're supposed to do in your 20s, but you are really the one who's going to define it. And same with your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I mean, I know people who wanted to have children in their late 40s, and they're like, I should have done it in my 20s and 30s, but I'm going to do it in my late 40s because that's something I always wanted to do. So I think as especially women as a collective, I think we are redefining what age means. And there right now is a big pushback to ageism. And I think that I'm going to attribute to the Gen Z generation, because we are the best generation. And we aren't our parents. We aren't even our grandparents. We want to continue living that life that brings us the fullest. There's that saying of like, live life to your fullest. And if we just stop when we're 50 or 60 and talk about everything that happened prior, then to me, that's no fun. And I say to some people, especially since I have some great role models now of living very active and happy lives when you're 70, 80, and 90. I think to myself, okay, I'm 54. Like, I never thought I would make it past 40. I'm 54. If I'm going to live to be 80, that's another 27 years. If I think about myself as an adult, like, I probably started adulthood when I was like 22, whatever, 23, right? If you think like after college and all that other stuff, that between 22 and 50 is pretty much the same amount of time as like 50 to 80. So it's like, it is midlife in that sense, but it used to always be this like downhill, oh, you're going to get slower. And it doesn't have to be that way. And there is right now, I like to say it's this blend, this meeting of the woo-woo and Western medicine, where Western medicine, I mean, I've been a healer all my life and doing massage since I was 24. And it was always like, you're weird. And now these weirdos are being validated by research. And so the more that Western medicine is starting to meet the woo-woo, I think that people will be able to live their life as they grow older in a healthier way, and with more of a I guess medically sound, or a body awareness and a body adaptability.
Okay, good. So you've already accomplished so much, and you've traveled, different parts of the world. So my final question for you is, do you have a bucket list? And if you don't mind sharing one or two things on that bucket list, and if you don't have a bucket list, just anything that you definitely want to accomplish in the near future.
That's a great question. So my bucket list is, I would love to live in South America, and or travel around and become more fluent in Spanish. I used to live in France and Europe, so one of my bucket lists is to have a house in France. But I think right now, when I think about a bucket list, it's probably very different than when I was younger, where it was really all about me. And now my bucket list is to serve others and to bring my knowledge and to bring my I guess philosophy of life to others. And I definitely hit that age where I'm like, okay, I lived 30, 40 years in just focusing on myself, especially, since I never had kids, it's like I didn't have to really worry about other people. But and now my bucket list is to have my my business, the Sporty Goddess, to affect and help as many people as possible while I still am here on Earth.
Yeah, I really, really like that. Well, I want to thank you again, Diane, for spending some time with us, sharing a little bit about your life on the beautiful island of Kauai, a little bit about just some of the things that you've done and the accomplishments that are to be the ones that you're working on now. I'm sure you'll kick butt on that 10K portion. Is it the 10K portion of the triathlon?
Yes, the run. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'll let you know. I'll give you some. I'll give you
an update.
Yeah.
Cool. She said, "Well, it's just a little bit shorter than Ironman." I'm like, "But Ironman is extremely grueling." So, the little that I know about Ironman. So, but no, I think this has been fantastic. It's been really, really fun getting to know you, and I'm so glad that you're there to be able to serve people, to help them, really actually do, not just think, actually do beyond their thoughts, beyond the limitations that sometimes that they may have put themselves in as a result of, as you said, chronic pain or some other injury that's caused them to maybe slow down a little bit in terms of their activity. So I do think that you're doing amazing work. And I thank you once again for spending some time with us on the Age Has No Limit podcast. So I want to make sure, as I always do, by reminding the audience that remember that age has no limit.